it's not about you. Like, who are you trying to serve? What are the barriers in their life? And like, how do you help them with your product and with your messaging?
Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the E-commerce Evolution Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Curry, CEO of OMG Commerce. And today I am super excited about my guest. If you look at some of the rising stars, some of the success stories, some of the companies that you want to model in the D2C space, this one has got to be on your short list. Talking to the CEO of Heart and Soil, Mr. Dean Brennan. We got to hang out at Ezra Firestone's Blue Ribbon Mastermind in Austin, Texas. I was blown away. Not only was I blown away by Dean's story, which we're going to get into today, but I'm a client. I'm a customer. I buy the product. I'm a big fan, and so we're going to dive into the wild success behind Heart and Soil. But with that, Mr. Dean Brennan, Dean, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Really excited about this, and I loved meeting you back at the Blue Ribbon event, and I think this is going to be a fun conversation.
Absolutely. So for those that don't know, Heart and Soil, not sure for those that are not familiar, I'm not sure what they're picturing right now, but what is Heart and Soil and why do you think it's so wildly popular right now?
Well, we could say Heart and Soil supplements.
Yes.
So we're a supplement company. It's funny. I say Heart and Soil too. I usually drop the supplement piece, but we're a supplement company, and I think we're a little bit different in a lot of ways. When you think of supplements, you generally think of a multivitamin or something that's generally produced in a lab. A lot of synthetic ingredients and things of that nature. We've realized, our founder is an MD, Dr. Paul Saladino, that, Americans don't really eat nutrient-rich organs anymore or nutrient-rich animal foods. And if you look at the nutritional profile of just liver, you'll find that it's one of the most nutrient-dense, if not the most nutrient-dense food on the planet.
Right.
And so, we kind of find ourselves in this point in time with chronic disease just taking over, rising medical costs, everything like that. It's talked a lot right now in the political realm, but, we've become a sick nation, and we've kind of abandoned the real foods that we used to eat that used to drive our biology and help us thrive. So to make a long story short, nobody likes to eat liver. Liver doesn't taste all that great. It's not the thing you think of when you're like, oh, I'm going to go have a really good dinner. Let me cook up a bunch of liver. Right. So, we take liver and other, really nutrient dense animal foods and freeze dry them, very low temperature process. We source from regenerative farms, that are good for the environment. And, we put it into a convenient capsule for you to take.
That's awesome. And I think actually I've got to tip my hat. I don't know if you know Andrew Udarian from E-commerce Fuel,
yes.
Leader in the space.
Awesome
guy.
I just talked with him like 3 weeks ago, was on his podcast.
No way.
Yeah,
So a combination of him and Drew Sanaki are the reasons I became a Heart and Soil.
I just talked to Drew
customer.
too, like a week ago. Yeah.
So
good guys.
So I think the way Drew made a post or something about doing a postcard for you guys or something, mm-hmm. and Andrew chimed in and said I got the postcard and I ordered it. It's amazing. And then I bought it from the LinkedIn post. So it's a roundabout way mm-hmm. of these guys in e-commerce. Let me know about your product. And I was like, this is really cool. And so what has been the vibe or the perception around the brand? Because, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers, but for a while, the thing has been plant-based and mm-hmm. vegan mm-hmm. and stuff like that. There has been a resurgence or maybe an emergence lately of, hey, carnivore diet and the fact that red meat actually is really nutrient dense, and especially things like liver and other organs, really nutrient dense. Has there been pushback? Or has this mostly been widely accepted? What's kind of talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, I love that because for me, it comes back to my story, I think, a little bit in terms of how I found this animal-based diet. Yeah. And plant foods have always been, at least in recent history, all the rage in terms of nutrition. I was somebody that early on in my life, in my 20s, I had ulcerative colitis. And I thought at the time, that plant foods were super nutritious and that they would do my body good. Now, I will say that when I went through that experience, so doctors couldn't tell me what I was supposed to do. They're like, you just have this genetic thing and we don't know what causes it. And you're just going to have to take this medication for the rest of your life. And someday you might be in a colostomy bag. So, here you go. And that was like devastating.
Not what you want to hear as a young man, for sure.
It was devastating for me as, a young person who prided myself in being like an athlete and healthy. And, you're like, man, I got a lot of years left to live in my life. And I really got to deal with this. Like what? So anyways, to get back to your question, personally, how I found my way to animal based is like, I tried a lot of different things. I was able to put my ulcerative colitis into remission just by removing processed foods, beer, alcohol, and then, manage my stress a little bit better and sleep a little bit more. It was in college when I was diagnosed with that. And, I fortunately grew up kind of in the country and my parents didn't have a lot of money. And so I thought to myself at the time, like, I wonder if what I'm eating is causing some of this stuff. And so I intuitively made some changes and, was able to heal in a lot of ways. What's interesting is I still had issues for a while that would just kind of like surface every so often. Even when I thought I was doing everything right. And at the time, what I thought was right was eating a lot of spinach. I was buying, the big package of spinach and, I bought into this thing that it's extremely nutrient rich and you need to eat a lot of it. And I was taking it by the handful, just raw, and it was irritating my gut. So it wasn't until later I kind of tuned into some people who were talking about plant foods in a different way. You probably remember the paleo diet, and
totally.
That kind of caught my attention because I thought, this nutrition thing is very hard. One day the news is telling you eggs are good. The next day they're telling you eggs are bad. Totally. Red meat's good. No, now red meat is bad. And that was like difficult to navigate. And when I started looking at things through more of an ancestral lens, looking at, how did our species evolve? Right. Like, how did we survive all of these years with pretty much zero chronic disease? How were people able to hunt into their 60s and run and sprint and do all of these things? That was the first key to me where I was like, this makes sense. If I look at I almost don't even need to get into the science of it. But when I look at things from this perspective, I can very easily make decisions for my health. Should I be sitting all day? Well, our ancestors probably didn't do that. Totally. So probably not. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit off track, but to answer your question, I think that the plant stuff is kind of caught on in a mainstream way. And I don't think it's been looked at through the right lens. I think a lot of the research that you see is survey based. And a lot of the research that you see that's like against meat is also survey based, which means that like when you see a study that says for the most part, like, oh, red meat bad, red meat causes this, they're surveying a large population of people, like let's say in the United States. And there's these confounding factors, like most people that eat meat probably also smoke cigarettes and do X, Y, and Z. And that's not considered in the research. So we have gotten a lot of pushback, but I also think that's what has really propelled a lot of the growth because it's different. And like, I don't know if you've ever, like, not nutrition, but any other type of product that you've ever bought that was a little bit different that you identified with, you want to tell 10 other people. So I think people doing this kind of diet or looking at, hey, I'm taking a product like whole package that has bull testicle in it and it contains naturally occurring testosterone, which no plant has that, right? A bioidentical
testosterone in any plant.
Yeah, bioidentical form of testosterone that actually your body can utilize. Like, you're not going to find that in the plant world. There's a lot of things you can't find in the plant world, but when you're taking that supplement and you tell your buddy, hey, you wouldn't believe what I'm taking, right? Like that has some word of mouth.
Got to take my bull testicle pills. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was telling you off air, I
Mhm.
did, because I'm a little bit ornery, I did sneak a whole package pill to both my wife and her sister,
Uh-huh.
let them take it because I was like, hey, this will give you energy. Like we had this family event and they were tired. So like, take this, it'll be great. And then I told them it was bull testicles. It was a fun moment for me. So
Yep.
anyway,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, but what's really interesting too, and to kind of piggyback on this, and I want to get into several things, like
Yeah.
the way you're growing and some of the unique things you're doing. I got a couple of things I want to dive into there. I also want to talk about how you're running the company as a CEO. I think it's really fascinating. I always want to learn. I'm leading a fast growing agency. You're leading a fast growing e-commerce company, so I want to dig into that too. But another quick note on this plant versus animal based diet. I did a gut health intelligence test a couple years ago. And what's interesting, this company, I'm not affiliated with them, but they say there's not really very many universal superfoods. And as I got my results back, some interesting things came up, and then I dug in a little bit deeper. Only 50%, according to this company, only 50% of the population should eat broccoli. About half the population, broccoli is an irritant, and it will actually block the absorption of other nutrients.
Yep.
Kale, not a universal superfood. It's one that I should avoid. Spinach is one that I should avoid completely. Red meat was on my allow and even recommended list. Super, super interesting. And I found as I started shifting and eating a little more the way this recommended, I felt better. My daughter takes plant-based protein. She loves it. When I take it, I feel terrible afterwards. And so, yeah, I think we're missing a lot. And I love the way you said it. Like, just think back to our ancestors. What were they doing? They were eating a lot of meat. And so makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's good. And to your point of like the broccoli thing, plants evolved to have plant defense chemicals. Like they don't want to be eaten. Like the fruit of a plant does. That's how it passes its seed, right? You eat a seed, or an animal eats a seed, it poops it out, it grows a new plant. That's how it reproduces and carries on, its chain. But the leaves of plants, they have a lot of defense chemicals, phytates. They bind to nutrients. And so just because you read on a package or your AG1 supplement that it has this and this in it, it doesn't mean that your body is actually utilizing it. And it doesn't mean that it's not binding to nutrients, and you're just not utilizing the full source of nutrients there.
Yeah. So love this little science break. So try some Heart and Soil supplements. I highly recommend. Let's talk about some of the things you do that are unique that I think are really valuable. I want to talk product packaging for a minute. I remember when I first got my first order, the box was really cool. It had like a bull on it. It's a really neat artwork. You open it up. It's a glass container for the supplements. It feels really high end. It was just nice. It was a nice experience, right? Sometimes you order supplements, and I'm a supplement guy. I try all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And you get just a plastic bottle and a cardboard box with paper stuffed in there. I'm assuming that's a very intentional thing, but can you talk through kind of why you do the packaging the way you do it?
Yeah, very intentional. I mean, the first thing I'll say is that plastic is a big problem in our environment.
Totally.
For a lot of different reasons, but one of them is the BPAs and the chemicals, the plastics leach into food and into water, and it can cause problems with your hormones. And so being a health company that actually cares about people's health, we're never going to put anything in plastic. That's just a decision we made on day one. It's something that we talk about. So that I'd say like that's point number one is like, and it's funny when we were sourcing the glass and stuff, we had a lot of people, why don't you just like, we had so many people that were just pushing us towards these plastic products because it's easier to get on the line. It's like you have less breakage, all of these things. And we were just uncompromising and like, no, we're using glass and let's figure out how to do glass. We actually just launched a protein powder product today, and that was a whole other thing. We're not using a plastic container like what most protein comes in. We're using we have this cardboard.
It's a really cool packaging, by the way. It's kind of a cylinder, and it's cardboard. It's got your signature bull on the front of it. Yep. Yeah, I was telling you how excited I am about that because I don't do well with most protein powder. So I can't wait to try yours because confidence is going to be better.
Absolutely. So that was the first part of the decision is like we have to give our customers like we have to follow through with what we say, right? Like we can't be, I think that's where like brand trust breaks down and everything else with companies is when you say we care about this or we do this and then you don't do it. Even the experience with the frontline team that you're working with, if you don't have the experience of like how you say as a company you're going to do things, if you don't do it that way, you got a problem. So everything from the experience with our frontline teams, with our packaging, we want to be who we say we are. So it boils down to that. And then the other thing is, the design on the cardboard, we just wanted it to have kind of a natural type of feel. I didn't want to overdo it. You see this packaging that's like way overdone, and, we source from regenerative farms, and we're kind of about returning to our roots as like, who we were back then. And that comes down to like craftsmanship, like who makes things anymore that are nice, that they spend time on. And so we thought about all those things with like how we package our products. And I think that's how our packaging evolved.
Yeah, it's really great. And I think, there's been lots of studies on the psychology and the experience behind product packaging. And of course, when you think product packaging, a lot of people go to the Apple example and just how fun it is to open an Apple product, and you feel good. You feel like you made a right choice, when you open that product. I feel the same way when I open the Heart and Soil supplements. What I've also found is that, we keep our supplements in part of our kitchen, so they are kind of visible as people come in. But having that glass jar out, I've noticed a few people look at it and say, what is this? Because it's also unique. It also says beef organs on it, which is also a little bit of a like, what are you doing here? Like I'm expecting a kale supplement. What's beef organs? But have you heard that before? Do you think this helps fuel word of mouth, or are the products displayed maybe just a little bit more in a house because of the packaging?
100%. Yeah. We get pictures from customers that send us pictures of like how their supplements are displayed on their counter. Funny personal story. I think I could say it probably will take a couple of minutes, but so I didn't have any experience in e-com before even getting into this whole thing. And you kind of have these proud moments sometimes. My dad works in North Carolina, and he works on appliances and goes to people's homes. He was a business owner and then switched jobs at some point close to retirement. And, my dad's not plugged into the health world. He doesn't know really like what Heart and Soil is. He knows I work there. And he knows it's a labor of love for me. But anyways, one day he's in this customer's house fixing their refrigerator, and the customer grabbed something off of his counter and was like, "Hey, sir, I got to talk to you about, have you heard of Heart and Soil?" Like I was struggling. I had I was obese and had energy problems, and like he had all of our supplements lined up on his counter.
Product evangelist,
and he's
trying to convert your dad.
Yeah, and he's talking to my dad, and I don't know. I think of like some of my top wins in my career, and just because I respect my dad so much, and like it's kind of a cool moment as a son, like your dad is out in the wild in another state of the country, and this guy comes up and shows you and tries to sell them on the products that I'm essentially involved with. It's pretty cool.
And then your dad being able to say, "Well, yeah, my son is the CEO of the company." Like that's a cool moment for your dad too. To feel some pride for his son. That is so great. I think it's also really cool that, with the right packaging and the right presentation of your product, it does impact the psychology of how someone experiences it. Not just in like displaying it and talking about it, but like, do they feel like it's working? That I've even, and I know you don't eat supplements from a taste standpoint, but I've seen studies that show like the packaging and the wording impacts the taste of a product. But I think it does impact the way someone experiences your product. But I think one really correlating topic here is margin and profitability. That's really been kind of the name of the game, as I know you guys have experienced. You guys kind of launched in the pandemic. What a crazy time to launch an e-commerce brand. But then e-commerce took off, right? So there was a period of time there where it was all about growth at all costs, right? And it was wild times for e-commerce. Now really the trend is, okay, growth, but profitable growth. You guys have been able to grow exceptionally fast with little to no margin degradation. You've been able to maintain your profitability, maintain your margins, and I would guarantee that some of your cost of goods are higher than others. So
Yes.
how do you think about that? How do you think about, spending more on product packaging and more on ingredients, and how that actually protects margins rather than hurt it? Because I think a lot of people are tempted to make shortcuts on some of those things to give them more margin, but I think in a lot of ways it does the opposite.
Yeah. So for us, there's a few things that come to mind. One is the reason why I believe that we've been able to grow as quickly as we have without degrading margins is due to organic growth.
Yeah.
That'd be like the number one thing that that I would even say, and that's a difficult thing to do. So you say like, well, how, why, right? I assure you that it did not happen in the ad channel. 100%.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. They're like, man, what did you guys do? You like shot out of a rocket ship. And, there were some timing things, it was a time of COVID. People were thinking about their health. You had people really kind of thinking like, well, oh my gosh, like what can I do to protect myself against COVID? There were those types of things that I think helped propelled us. But the number one thing that happened that people don't always realize is you got to back up from launch date about 4 years. Our founder, Dr. Paul Saladino, for 4 years built, earned attention and an owned audience. Podcast, 2 of them every week, daily Instagram posts, email newsletter. That was 4 years of not making a return, right? But building an engaged audience that legitimately wanted to hear from him and would have really cared. Seth Godin always says like, do you position yourself in a way in which if you left, would people miss you? Right? If he would have left on that day before launch, a whole lot of people, thousands of people would have missed him and would want to hear from him. So
great way to put it.
That I think is the number one driver, is the organic growth. And the hard part when you get to like the place where we're at right now, like we went from 0 to about 50 million in 3 years. And you hit a little bit of a different growth phase. And so the challenge is like, how do you continue to amplify that organic growth? Because I think the organic growth helps make the paid acquisition more efficient. It's difficult to do, right? You can't really measure it. But we're spending a lot of time thinking about those things right now. So organic growth is the first thing. The other thing, I mean, we've been we pretty frequently like revisit our terms with our suppliers, with our manufacturers.
Yes, you've got to.
We've made a lot of progress over the 4 years in those areas, which we could have easily not done and just let it go because the margins are good and it would have been like no big deal, right? But if you can work on those operational components and save a margin point, a couple points here and there, it's huge for your business, and it kind of prolongs the time that you can stay in business and you have extra resources to be able to hit that top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel.
Yeah, you got to protect margin, and I love the way you described that. Is finding a point or two here and there, it adds up, and it allows you to either invest more for the customer, so invest in that next product, invest in that protein product, or it allows you to invest in great content or community or advertising or something, or it just allows you to be a really healthy company, which then you're going to be able to weather storms. Because one thing that we've learned lately is that nothing stays the same, right? You've got the global pandemic and then crazy inflation, all kinds of stuff. And like it is not a predictable life we live, right? And those companies that were not able to protect margin are really hurting now, really hurting the last year or so. It's been a struggle. And so companies like yours, where you are protecting margin, you're in such a great place. I want to talk a little bit about content for a second, because this is so important. I don't know very many great brands, whether that's a consumer brand or great agencies. That's the space that I live in, obviously, as a service provider, that don't do something related to organic content. And I think the very best are very good at organic content. My buddy Preston from Chubby's. He talks about this all the time, right? It's one of the unlocks they had at Chubby's. You know, and they had a 10-figure exit, right, and then $1 billion IPO. They started investing in organic content, fun, irreverent content related to their wild, board shorts and other things that they sell. And sometimes it's hard. You mentioned hard to track a return, right? I posted this content. What was the ROI on this content? I don't really know, but I know collectively what it does for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm an ad guy, right? Like that's what we do as an agency, and I'm a firm believer in paid ads.
Yep.
But you've got to have a community as well, and organic fuels ads. Like, it makes my job easier as an ad guy if you got good organic content. So you guys do email marketing really well. That was another thing I was very impressed by. Like, I would find myself reading your emails. I would go to delete this email. Like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to click on that. And then I'd read the whole thing. But yeah, how do you guys approach content? How do you think about it? Is the founder still really involved in content? Talk a little bit about that strategy.
Yeah. So our founder, he has his own kind of personal brand, and that's still very top of funnel for us and drives, some people into our ecosystem. Content for us, if I could boil it down, it's I believe that you need to have something to talk about, right? That is worth talking about, that other people care about. And not that it's all about mission statement and this kind of woo-woo stuff, but for us, at the end of the day, we want to inspire people and guide people to better health. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I look at content. I'm the first question to me is how can we inspire people? And then how can we guide people? How can we hit the inspiration piece? And then where in the funnel, what channels does it make sense to incorporate this more practical guidance types of pieces where someone's oh, if I'm shopping, do I have a shopping list? How do I do that? And so that's how we approach content. We're how can we reach people, inspire them? How can we give them practical steps to incorporate this stuff? And then how can we get them to share a piece of content with somebody else? So from a high level, that's essentially what drives it. And I think you need a product that essentially works, and you need something worth talking about. And we kind of have the blessing of, our entire team believes in this stuff and they live it. Almost every single person here, had a health condition that they were able to resolve using this lifestyle and our products, or just, eating liver. And so the people making the content, it comes through, it's subtle, but we're not saying, hey, X and Y agency who doesn't really understand what we're doing.
Right.
We're not having them create the content for us.
Yes.
We're doing it. And there's something about that.
Always better if you can do it, in my opinion. Get someone to maybe help with the polishing of it or something, but the core should come from you.
I agree. I 100% agree. The passion comes through. And that was part of the strategy too, is we're telling somebody hey, this, and this can help with your health outcomes. So we better have people on camera that actually do it. We're not going to be the doctor that's telling you, hey, don't smoke, it's bad for you. But then you're taking a smoke break and smoking a pack of cigarettes, right? We do it and we live it. And I think that comes across in the content. It's a high level strategy. It's not a tactic. But it's more what fuels it, I believe.
Yeah. And that's so much more effective than having the goal of, I must create content. I've got to create content today. That's what I got. And almost always that's going to come across as stilted or invaluable, or you're just going to be talking to talk, right? Mm-hmm. But you guys are inspiring and guiding. And really your whole team is that guy that encountered your dad who's hey, I got to tell you about that. I just got to tell you about it. I know you're fixing my appliance, but I got to tell you about these supplements, right? That's your whole team. Mm-hmm. And so the content comes naturally there. Am I inspiring and am I guiding? And then that's also a good way to okay, maybe I have an off day creating content because we all have them. is this inspiring at all? Is this guiding anybody? Is this helping in any way? Okay, I got to rework it. But
Yeah,
I love your content, love your emails.
Thank you.
Keep up that work for sure.
The other, I was going to add one more thing to that I think is important, and it's quite obvious to a lot of people that have been in marketing for a while. But one book, Donald Miller's Story Brand.
One of the best, dude. Love Donald Miller.
Yeah, I've listened to him for a while, and Seth Godin also. But that book, I remember, is when everything kind of like clicked for me, and I was like, oh. And this is pre Heart and Soil, when I was doing other creative marketing. But that's been one kind of guiding principle for us, is that it is not about us. It is about the customer. It's about the barriers that they have to achieve the outcome that they want in their life. And so if you look at our newsletter, our Instagram, our YouTube, our podcast, that principle, you can see it across all of our different channels. And sometimes we stray away from it a little bit, but that's one consistent that we've had from day one. And I think it's very, very important. If you're like, it's not about you. Like, who are you trying to serve? What are the barriers in their life? And like, how do you help them with your product and with your messaging?
Yeah. I love the way Donald Miller positions it. You are not the hero in your customer's story. They are the hero in their story. You're the guide. You're the one who's helping them unlock and get to another level of the hero journey, right? You're not, they're the ones climbing Mount Everest. You're the Tenzing Norgay, right? You're the Sherpa helping them along the path to get where they want to go. And sometimes, you do have to, postures, maybe I don't like the word posture, but maybe you got to position yourself like, here's why we're so freaking awesome. Yeah. But it's so that we can support you, and it's so that you can become the hero that you want to be and deserve to be, and things like that. So it's a really great way to position it. Love Donald Miller and How to Build a Story Brand. Awesome stuff. Sorry, you have one more thought? Yeah, please. No, this is good.
I had one more thought as you said that, and this might be useful, but like, this is an example of it, right? So we were, maybe a couple of weeks ago, actually, the team was producing some reel content for Instagram, and it was essentially showing off what we're doing at HQ and what we're eating. And one teammate kind of called it out and is like, oh, like this is we're like, hey, this is about us. Look at what we eat. And it sparked a conversation that was like, it's a subtle difference, but it's like, okay, let's still show what we're eating. But like, let's say like, hey, I come into work every day at 8. I struggle with having energy at 10. Like, some of you may experience that as well. This is what I eat for breakfast, right? You flip that around and you add that context to where it can resonate with somebody. And you're not just talking about yourself or just showing a highlight reel of what you're doing as a brand.
Yeah, totally agree, because you can be inspiring by showing someone what you eat for the day, because like, hey, this is how I solve my energy problem. I want to help you solve your energy problem too. So here's how I do it. That's valuable.
Yes.
Just take a look at what I'm eating is not.
No, exactly.
That's valuable. That's great. So one thing I want to kind of get into, and this is something you shared at Blue Ribbon in Austin. We're a growing agency, right? We're acquiring other agencies. That's kind of one of our areas of focus as we move in the next 3 to 5 years. I'm investing in brands. I love this space, but I've got to be more and more disciplined with my time. There's a time in my 20s when we didn't have kids and I could just work all the time and like whatever. But now like I've got to be focused with my time. And so I'm just really curious, how do you structure your day, or your week rather, as a CEO, and what insights might we be able to gain from that?
It's changed a lot. And this is something I tweak a lot, and I think everyone should,
Me too.
You can set something and try to force yourself to do it for like an extended period of time. And it can get to a point where it's not productive. So I've noticed that as a CEO too. Like, there's always different pressures at different phases, and like you have to adjust and adapt and kind of like meet the moment where it is. But there's a few things that have always worked for me. One is I do deep work better in the mornings than the afternoons. And so I'm very protective of my time in the morning. So generally, I'll break out, like, Monday is my more management day. It's when we have our leadership meeting, and we do that one in the morning. But we do a lot of deep work and make decisions on things, and it's more strategy focused. I do a lot of one-on-ones on Mondays. I get those knocked out at the beginning of the week. I think it's good to kind of start the week with some momentum and have those conversations and not let, if you have those on Thursday, I think you've missed some days. So I'd like to get off with like good energy with the whole team. The other days, Tuesdays more like product or research focused. Wednesdays, I dip into the financial stuff, but my meetings, if I have a meeting with like our fractional CFO or whatever, that's kind of on that financial day, but in the afternoon. The deeper work is in the morning. Thursdays, I try to, aside from this conversation, cause it's Wednesday. Generally, if I'm talking to anybody outside of the company, I do that Thursday afternoon. I try not to kind of mess up the flow of those other days and make sure that I'm giving my due diligence to whatever the topic is for that particular day. And Thursdays are a little R&R too. I try to like take the morning hikes on Thursdays, get in more of that, reflective state, if that makes sense.
Totally.
I kind of go on and off with this habit, but I found it really helpful to write things down by hand. And so I'm a big fan of like,
you remember better when you write by hand.
100%. I've tried. It's funny. Most of my life I've been at like a productivity nerd. So I've tried like every productivity system, workflows, connecting apps together. Like I've tried so many things. And the one thing that it just works every time is writing things down. Yeah. I remember it better. I retain it better. And as a reflective exercise to like, when's the last time you thought back, like what happened, like a Friday afternoon, what happened this week? Where was I good?
Yeah.
What decisions did I make? Were those the right decisions? What could I have done differently? Like, I think most people rarely do that kind of work because it's easy to do. It's like, it's like any other habit that's like really powerful and compounds over time, but it just is something that's easy to let go. I try to do that stuff Thursday morning. And then, Fridays, I try to keep those days light as well. And I do a little bit more strategy work, like longer term, like 3-year type thinking, for the company on those days. Of course, like any business, fires pop up all the time.
Totally.
Sometimes it gets disrupted. I'm not trying to paint a perfect picture for your audience.
Right,
like, oh, that's impossible. But like more or less directionally, that's what I try to do. And sometimes a wrench gets thrown into it and that's okay. You don't stress over it. You just kind of move on.
Yeah, totally. There's going to be days, there's going to be weeks where it gets derailed a little bit, but that's all right. You get right back on track. And I really like the way you laid that out. I like the way Alex Hormozy kind of talks about it. You got either like manager time or maker time those are the phrases he used. And it's a different mindset, right? Like manager is all about efficiency and it's also about people and relationship. Like let's get as many meetings in as we can and let's, tackle problems. The maker time, it's kind of like I need space. I need room to breathe. I need to go deep or get lost in something and think creatively. And so those usually don't go well together. And so, but my calendar is actually similar in a lot of respects to the way you're doing it. I like more meeting days early in the week because I think if you're waiting until later in the week, I wouldn't be able to focus. Like if I didn't have my meetings and my check-ins and our all hands and all that stuff, if that was later in the week, I would have a hard time going deep the first part of the week because I'd be worried about stuff.
Yes.
And so I think getting that, taking care of that, and prioritizing that first frees me up anyway to do other things. I really like the way you also said, hey, Thursday afternoons, that's when I talk to outside people from the company. And I think you have this temptation, and this is temptation as a CEO of a growing agency, like I need to be accessible and people need to be able to reach me. And like, no. Your responsibility is to your team and to the company and maximizing that return. You're not responsible for outside people, right? And so obviously you need to be accessible to a certain degree, but keep that confined.
Yes.
And I think that's really, really smart. So you said that's kind of evolved over the years. Did you any resources there, trial and error? Like how did you land on that?
Yeah, I kind of landed on that. I mean, it's taken many shapes or forms. Like the deep work stuff and the shallow work, morning, afternoon, that's always stayed consistent. one thing that I've refined that really helps a lot, and you kind of hit on this a little bit, but like what I think somebody needs to take inventory of, like, what is the deep work that I should be doing that's going to add the most value, right? Like you can go through day to day and spend time on things that aren't really that meaningful. And so what I do, and there's a million ways you can do this, is in my project management or my task management software, it's Asana. I have a custom field for deep work or shallow work and then a priority. And what I found really works for me is that I have like an input capture. So anytime in a meeting, anytime somebody texts me, anytime it's in Slack and there's an actual action that I need to take or a question in my mind of something I need to figure out, I input capture that into Asana very quickly. And so this list starts getting created in there, and I don't pay attention to that list until the end of the day. So my last like 20 minutes in the day, I go into that list and I'm like, okay, is this important? Is it not? And I kind of move them. And this is the key, is I will block out time. If that thing's going to take more than like 5-10 minutes, or it involves like an hour of like deep focus, I block it on the calendar and I attach that task to it. So that helps me not get distracted by this giant list of things that I need to do, because if I set my calendar on Sundays, I set it for the whole week and it evolves a little bit. That's why I revisit it every single afternoon. I might adjust some things for the next day moving forward. But if I do that right, then when I show up every day, I know exactly what I need to do. The resources, the conversations I had are all right there. So I'm not poking around in 10 different systems to try to figure out where I'm at. And I take notes on that stuff in the task. And so it kind of keeps me on track. That's been one of the biggest, I hate the word game changer, but it's been the biggest kind of like tool that's really helped me focus my time and energies in the right place.
So good. Always trying to get to that highest and best use of time, and not that you can't do small stuff. Sometimes we have to do that, but yeah, prioritizing, preparing so that you go into your day and you know what you're going to do. And then if you get derailed a little bit, that's all right. Then you just get right back on track and knock out the list.
And what doesn't work, or what hasn't worked for me, is blocking every single minute of the day. Because it's easy to do that if you start like, most people, when they start doing that, they block out every single minute. I drove myself crazy doing that, and I failed over and over. I wasn't getting all the stuff done, and then it would just add up. And so, you know,
and then if you feel like, oh, I missed that block, just screw it. I missed the whole thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Or you start noticing that like tasks that you blocked, you don't actually do them when the time comes up. That's a signal to me like, oh, this isn't really important. So then I either delete it or I figure out somebody who should work on it. And most often or not, it's just not important.
Really, really good. And man, that's one of the biggest unlocks, is just realizing maybe I don't need to do this at all. Maybe I need, someone else needs to do it, or maybe we just don't need to do it, which I think is pretty powerful too. So, Dean, this has been awesome. I'm mindful of time. I know you got a hard stop. You're very generous with your time. This was really, really helpful. What's next for Heart and Soil Supplements? I'm super excited to try the protein, and that just got released, so that's new. But what's next for you and or Heart and Soil?
Yeah, a lot of exciting things. I'm spending a lot of my deep focus time right now on, I don't have an answer to the question yet, but we talk about this organic growth and how to amplify it, and word of mouth, how to amplify that. And at the end of the day, for us, it's like, how do we not just drop the supplements on somebody's step and walk away, but like, how do we actually become actively involved in their transformation and in their journey? I'm really inspired by what Dave Ramsey has built at the Ramsey Network.
So good. So good.
And I've got a number of things planned, but what's interesting there is like, I had this aha moment one day where I was like, whoa, like this network that Dave Ramsey has built is really good at moving someone from like in debt to out of debt and happy. And then I realized that the same things that get in the way with changing your health outcomes are like the same things that get in the way with personal finance. It's very obvious. Like everybody knows, oh, I should spend less than what I make. right? Everyone knows that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like, it's not rocket science. Saving some money, not rocket science. But for some reason, 90% of people can't do that, right? But
Right,
he's
right.
built a framework that gets people to their
Works,
goal.
man. It works.
And that's when I realized that like health is the same way. It's like
Yeah.
there's nuance in it, like there is in personal finance, but there's a lot of confusion and nuance. But at the end of the day, most people know I shouldn't be drinking a bunch of alcohol.
Right.
I
I
shouldn't
should move a little.
Yeah, I shouldn't be overeating. I shouldn't be eating all these processed foods. Like people have an intuitive sense of what they should do and what they shouldn't
Right.
do, but they don't do it. So what gets in the way? It's those psychological barriers.
Yeah.
And it's the psychological barriers in the finance world. And so I started studying kind of his ecosystem, and I've talked with some folks over there. And I'm trying to figure out right now, how do we build even more of an ecosystem and maybe some non-physical products to actually help people in that same kind of way that Dave Ramsey does in personal finance. And I think that'll be a huge unlock for us as a business. But I think it's going to be an even greater unlock for the people that we're trying to serve.
It's a big challenge, but I kudos to you for working on tackling it. Yeah, it's not that we don't know what to do per se.
Yeah.
It's that we don't have the inspiration. We maybe don't have tools, and then we don't have the guidance that we need, right? And so it sounds like you guys are providing that already to a certain degree and wanting to go deeper in that, which is really, really awesome. So
Heck yeah.
Super great, man. Thank you so much. Heartandsoil.co. Check it out. Buy some of that new protein. Try the beef organs. Try anything else that looks or sounds good to you. Try it. Confident you're going to love it. Any final words of wisdom or anything else that the audience should check out?
I just want to say thank you. This was a great conversation. I enjoyed it. If people do want to look me up, I'm on Twitter, Dean C. Brennan. You can find Heart and Soil on Instagram pretty easily. Just search Heart and Soil supplements. But no, I've loved this conversation, and I haven't done a ton of these, and I get a little nervous for talking in front of people, but
dude,
this was great.
Yeah, you're a natural, man. Like this was easy for me as a host and super fun, and I wish we had more time. Like it's one of those things where we're like, dang, conversation's over. That was super fast and really good. So yeah, kudos to you. I'll link to Twitter and Instagram and stuff. Obviously, it's easy to search and find, but I'll link to it in the show notes as well. So, Dean Brennan, ladies and gentlemen, Dean, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
Absolutely. And as always, thank you for tuning in. We'd love to hear from you. What would you like to hear more of on the show? And if you haven't done it, leave that review on iTunes. That helps other people discover the show. And with that, until next time, thank you for listening.